Helena, welcome to today's meeting, episode number 4.
Thank you, Joe.
Great to have you here, and I'm looking forward today to tackle a very important aspect of why am I stressed. But I think it's just important for us just to, if you can summarize it up for us, what we've been talking about in the previous episode, and just to create a link with today's topic.
Will be my pleasure. We all face stress. The way we face our stress and experience our stress differs from person to person. We experience stress uniquely.
Yeah. Yes.
Things that might stress me out might not faze you at all.
Or may excite me.
It might excite you. Exactly.
Yeah, it does.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it is important to remember that prolonged, unattended stress is extremely harmful
Yes.
to our mental and physical well-being. And therefore it is important that we know
Yes.
what triggers stress in us.
Because your triggers and my triggers are not the same.
Not the same.
And
Not the same.
so are we going to tackle this today also?
We are
into depth?
going to. We are going
Okay.
to. I just want to make a comment on this, your triggers and my triggers. I think one of the important things that we sometimes forget, in our own little worlds, is that everybody's triggers need validation. So it is important that we also acknowledge our own triggers as being triggers, but also leave room for somebody else's triggers
Yes.
to be their triggers.
The ability to stand in their shoes, to know where they come from and why they behave in that
Yes.
way, why they
Yes.
freak out in that way,
Yes.
for instance. Yeah.
Yes. It's because I also think that can help with relieving our own stress if we understand where somebody else comes from within their own triggers.
Yes. Okay.
If we look at stressors in general, we can divide them into 2 groups.
Okay.
We have internal stresses and we have external stresses.
Okay.
Right.
All right. So we're going to first talk about internal.
We're going to talk about the
Okay.
internal stresses
Right.
first. Now, internal stresses are created by our own belief systems and the way we measure ourselves in the world where we live in.
So it's how the mind thinks and interprets things.
Yes.
Self-generated. It's a mindset.
It's a mindset.
Okay.
It's a mindset. And often, this belief system that we have influences how we define success. Whether it is in the place of work or as human beings. And we tend to compare. Okay, so we have social media.
Yes.
Wonderful thing. But the root of a lot of internal stresses.
Because of comparisons.
Of comparisons. Because now you look at this lovely pictures on
Yes.
Instagram. This beautiful people
Yes.
having so much fun,
Looking perfect.
looking perfect, and you think to yourself, I will never be able to. Look that way, do
Yeah.
that way, be that way.
Yeah.
Or you might have a colleague which you deem as extremely successful. You look at that colleague and you think, what am I lacking? There's a nice saying that says that comparison is the thief of joy. And this is exactly what happens. And how we generate our own stress, because comparing leads to feelings of failure, feelings of not being good enough, feelings of not being worthy,
Yes.
having unrealistic expectations of ourselves. And the product of that is things like negative self-talk.
Yes.
So we give ourselves negative feedback the whole time.
Yeah.
It can be, we become pessimistic.
Yes.
Life loses its shine. We expect bad things to happen because we are not good enough for good things to happen to us.
Yes.
And that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Imagine that, yeah. So it's basically all started in this case with a thought. And the thought becomes reinforced stronger and stronger. That thought is obviously based on certain experiences that we had once upon a time, maybe childhood. But the fact is, what I hear today is that that thought, like in this case, you use the example of comparison, becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. Eventually, it rules our lives, and now it starts to affect, like you said, the self-talk.
Yes. And it influences, our whole outlook on life and what we expect.
I can imagine that, yeah, how it will really just even have the ability to ruin our lives in the workplace when someone gets a promotion and I don't get a promotion, or someone is wearing a certain brand, and especially the younger generation, but it can also happen with more the adults as well, that we can fall into this comparison trap.
Absolutely.
So that's internal stresses.
That's internal stresses.
Let's talk about external stressors, the things around us.
Yes. That would be things outside of ourselves,
Yes.
which we perceive as threats.
Okay.
So I want to take the COVID-19 pandemic as an example.
Yeah, relevant example.
Yeah, it
Yes.
was something we all experienced in some way or the other. COVID-19, first of all, created a fear in ourselves to become ill. Because we were bombarded with footage of people on ventilators, people dying. We lost family and friends.
Yeah.
We saw people lying outside hospitals on makeshift mattresses because there were no place in the hospital for them. So our own health was threatened. Our own lives was actually threatened in the process. Then some of us had, high-risk loved ones, maybe elderly parents, even staying with us in the house, and we had the fear of making them ill. So it's not only me getting ill, but me passing the virus.
Yes.
And maybe causing that person to die.
Yeah, like a two-way stress thing going on.
And together with the fear, you also took on the responsibility of keeping that person safe.
Yes.
Right. So their lives were threatened. So it caused a lot of stress. People's livelihoods were threatened. The hard lockdown caused businesses to shut down. People lost their income. As the situation kind of prolonged, people lost their jobs. And with that, comes the whole thing of financial security.
Mm.
How do I make ends meet?
Yeah.
How do I pay the bills? Another thing that actually happened was we had this perceived possibility that the shops might run empty.
Mm.
And we saw people reacting to that.
Yes.
Yeah? Binge buying food,
Mm.
binge buying toilet paper. That was the funny part of COVID to me.
Yeah, the news even made it worse. They blew it up. And you could see the visuals.
Exactly. And on the very sad side, we actually lost loved ones.
Oh.
We grieved and we were bereaved.
Mm.
And in my personal situation, I lost 21 members of my family and circle of friends.
21. That is really a lot.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. And what I experienced was compassion fatigue.
Mm.
There just comes a stage where you cannot feel with those people any longer. You can't. You have to protect yourself.
The one death after the other, the one coma, and how it affects you. It's like numb.
Yeah. You
Totally.
just go numb. You just absolutely go numb. And it took me quite a while after the pandemic to recover to kind of the normal, empathy and sympathy and emotions and so on. So I'm not the only one. I'm just using myself now as an example. But lots of people went through that.
Yes.
I know of people who lost their parents, both their parents on the same day. How traumatic can that be? And what made it worse was the fact that access to hospitals were not even limited. It was like prohibited.
Yeah.
So you couldn't say goodbye. You didn't have that opportunity. Limitations on the numbers of people that were able to attend funerals. Had the effect that a lot of people were also not able to go and say that last goodbye. So it was a terrible time, and I don't think anybody was left untouched. But it serves as a very good example of how one event can cause a lot of stress on a variety of life's aspects.
Yeah, when looking at COVID in retrospect now, I think there's so many lessons that we now can learn in terms of stress. And that we don't always have control over these things, because when we talk about external stressors, we don't really have control over it. It's around us, beyond our control. And the coping mechanisms that we require, you used the example of compassion fatigue when it goes on and on. Yes, there's deep lessons to be learned, and I'm so glad that we have this conversation here today to dive really deep into this aspect.
Yeah. I think what is also important to remember, Jath, is that it is not only catastrophic incidences which cause us to experience stress. There are also extreme life events which we go through. It might be something like the death of a spouse or a partner, a loved one, somebody very close to you. That causes tremendous stress. Because over and above for the profound loss, the grief and the bereavement, which is acute, you also have a longer term effect. Because, for example, if you lose your life's partner, you also lose part of your identity.
Yeah.
Whether that is through death or divorce or whatever, you are not that person's husband or wife or partner any longer. So part of you actually dies.
Yes. Yeah.
Together with that, we often see financial implications. There's maybe a loss of an income. There's maybe a person that was not, insured well enough for the remaining spouse to be able to keep the house, for example. Now there's an adjustment in lifestyle, in everyday day-to-day living that needs to take place.
Yes.
And that causes us to experience what can become chronic stress, because this goes on over a very long time.
Yeah.
Even the administration around an estate taking 2-3 years. I mean, that's 2-3 years of continuous stress.
Yes. And it does take a toll on us.
It does take a toll. If we look at something like long-term financial difficulty, if you just cannot make ends meet, and you cannot see the light, you cannot see this changing, and every time you go to the shop, you are reminded of the cost of living just escalating, going up and up and up. This is a core source of serious stress. And some experts actually believe that financial stress is the most harmful of all forms of stress. And we often think, just make do with what you have. It's not that easy. It's absolutely not that easy.
Yeah.
Because often in a family setup, for example, you've got these kids, these children. So there's school fees, there's clothes. Now they grow like beanstalks. So every 6 months you need to buy new stuff because they've outgrown it. So the demands do not end.
Yes, that's very true. That also explains to me why people experience financial stress so intense, sometimes even more intensely than health challenges, for instance, because of its ability to affect so many aspects of our lives.
Exactly.
When it comes to financial stress, I know many people, they say they can handle any stressor, but financial stressor, that's their weakness.
Yes.
That's their trigger point, that they don't know how to handle it when they can't pay the bills, when the budget is not meeting ends meet.
Yeah. And that is actually why, if we look at that list of extreme life events, losing a job is right up there, because it triggers, all these ripple effects that we have. Yes, and serious illness. You just refer to health, but serious illness is also a trigger for stress. It can be yourself being diagnosed with a serious illness, or a loved one. And again, there's various reasons why that becomes a trigger. Firstly, there's the threat to our health, to life. Okay, and if we think right back to the ancient times, that was the first primitive fear. It was a threat to health. So something that is life-threatening will always be a trigger for stress.
Yes.
But now it actually goes further. What does serious illness mean in terms of finances?
Mm.
In terms of caring for that person?
Mm.
Often, a caregiver needs to change their whole lives.
Mm.
I mean, we know about people, resigning from their jobs to be able to care for a seriously ill spouse or child or parent even, So it has financial implications.
Yeah.
Which causes stress. There's a lot of hospital visits and doctor's visits, so it's up and down and up and down. So your routine is also upheaved.
Yeah, disrupted, totally
And disrupted.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And some people really do not do good with that.
Yeah.
Some people are more adaptable and they can kind of take it in their stride. But some people really get stressed if their routines are disrupted. So that's actually another spin-off, of having somebody being diagnosed with a serious illness. And then, obviously in South Africa we have difficult socio-economical circumstances, which causes a lot of stress. We have extreme poverty.
Yeah.
We have unemployment. And, referring back to financial stress, we can imagine that extreme poverty and financial stress or unemployment must cause severe financial stress.
Yes.
We have crime. I mean, we all look over our shoulders every day of the week, the whole day, to try and keep ourselves safe. We have social and political unrest from time to time, which causes stress. So, being stressed in South Africa is actually a given.
It's a reality, and I can imagine if there's some of our listeners or viewers now that stays in an unsafe environment, they stay in a house where intruders can just kick off the door. They're at work, but they worry about their loved ones at home now because when they work on shift. So these are the realities that we face in our country that contributes towards stress.
Yeah. And then, I mean, the research that actually confirms that, makes absolute sense to us.
Yes.
If we just look at the world around us.
Yes. Well, I think we've covered a lot of important things today regarding stress and why we get stressed, and just to understand our trigger points very, very accurately, to have a profound understanding of what triggers you, what triggers me, and to know yourself very, very much. Helena, is there anything else that you also feel is very important on this topic to add on?
Yes, I think we can briefly refer to stress in the workplace per se. Because there are specific triggers that we find in the workplace.
Yes.
And it is important to realize that if you have a job, you most likely have stress. That is a given. Things that will trigger stress in the workplace for most people will be things like increased job demands, especially if that is associated with meeting difficult deadlines. That often causes us stress, and together with that, we experience that pressure to perform, no matter what. And if your job demands more than what you can deliver, you will experience stress. Things like job insecurity, we've referred to the financial implications, but also our jobs gives us our identity, whether we like it or not. It gives us purpose. So the threat of losing that might also cause us stress. Longer working hours is definitely a source of stress because it impacts on our work-life balance. So now you have challenges at work, you have challenges at home, and you kind of can't meet any one of those challenges. So that will definitely cause stress. Things like small things like excessive commuting, email overloads, negative relationships with colleagues. If there's a difficult colleague or an
strained relationship that you have with colleague.
Yes.
Can imagine,
Yes. Or if you have an uncaring manager. Those are all things that will add to stress specifically stress in the workplace. And then what is important, I think, just in conclusion to say, is that we do not keep our stresses apart. It's, lots of people say they do. I leave my home at home and I leave my work at work. Doesn't happen.
Nope, it doesn't work.
It doesn't work that way. So it is important also to communicate. To communicate with your loved ones that you are experiencing a difficult time at work. And not just to, act out. And they don't know.
To make them aware.
Yes, make them aware you are having difficulty. Sometimes people feel that it's not professional to discuss their personal stuff at work, which is good and fine, but it's also important that somebody somewhere in the workplace just know that you are having a difficult time. Maybe need a bit of space.
Yes.
I do think that's important because we cannot separate it.
The communication about that we are struggling is important. It can help others to understand what we are going through. One thing that stands out for me this session, Helena, is that our listeners and viewers must become aware that, for instance, when we talk about work stress, it impacts other areas of stress. So when we look at stress and the triggers of stress, is for every person to be aware of their package. It's like a bundle of, it's like you've got a bag here with many things inside of the bag, and each one is a stressor, but it's one bag.
Absolutely.
And thank you for coming in today to the studio to make us aware of all of these many facets that plays a role in when we carry this bag. And I'm looking forward in our next episode how we can look at ways to alleviate this weight that people experience in their lives. But thanks once again for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.